Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of podcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of Rainier Avenue Radio World. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Welcome. It's good to see everyone here on this beautiful, I'll say overcast Monday, September 2nd, 2024. I was curious to see how everyone's Labor Day was. I spent some time with the fam, and today it was a good experience. I actually just got back in this morning. For those people that pay attention, I'm originally from Detroit, so I ended up flying out Friday, hanging out with the fam. My dad, mom, got some good old cooking. Had to get caught up with the cooking. It ended up coming back this morning. But today I wanted us to talk about patterns of behavior. Let's think about that for a second. So if we notice, we wake up in the morning on the West Coast, what do we normally see? A big, bright, shiny ball in the sky. If it's not covered with clouds, we normally see the sun, right? Religiously, right? And then it goes down. And then at night, we typically see stars or we see the moon. And it's like clockwork, right? Patterns, right? 1 + 1 is 2. 2 + 2 is 4. 3 + 3 is 6, and so on and so forth. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about patterns because patterns give us a sense of security, right? Think about that. If you have a situation where your parents are still around, you see them often, that gives you a sense of security. Or you have a friend that you communicate with on a daily basis, or let's say quite often. It could be a couple days a week. That creates a pattern. And we have positive patterns and we have negative patterns. And I wanted to talk about that. So when I went to spend some time with my family, the last time I was with the fam was in 2020. And so that's been 4 years. Ironically, when I moved here, it was like the end of October. Man, this is crazy. So the end of October 2020 is when I moved out to Seattle. I remember because I moved to Federal Way November 1st, 2020, when everything was kind of shut down. And so this whole experience here in Seattle was something totally new. And so when I went back, it was cool to get caught up with fam, but I noticed some interesting patterns that I wanted to talk about. So, and think about this within your life. Think about those individuals that are caught up on Groundhog Day, right? And this is not a jab to say anything negative about my fam, because I feel like we all have friends, family members, associates, and even ourselves, right? Where we're basically recapitulating the same thing over and over and over again. And for me, it was a very interesting experience because I was like, wow, I saw my sister and I noticed that she communicated a lot of things from high school, which is the past. And then I noticed my dad, he communicated some things from the past. And then I noticed some individuals was caught up on anger, hate. Some individuals caught up on love, compassion, and unity. And I wanted to bring this up because what pattern are you communicating? Like what pattern are you focusing on? At the end of the day, through all our trials and tribulations, we always have a choice, right? We always have a choice. And so what are you choosing to put your energy in? And I'm sharing this because I noticed that as I was talking to my sister, she was focusing on the past. And so when I tried to bring her to the current situation, she wanted to go back to the past. And so I started to kind of take a step back and just kind of observe. And then I asked myself, what are some things within myself that I recapitulate with the past? And being honest with myself, one thing I noticed that I really, really enjoy is old school music. Like don't get me wrong. I do like some of the new school. But I do notice that, like, if I'm trying to knock out a project or I need to take care of some business as far as staying focused for a period of hours, I need to have some good music. And so that's one of my patterns. Old school, CL Smooth, Pete Rock. I'm originally from Detroit, so I got to get caught up with that old school, Detroit Motown vibe. I do like the West Coast as well. It all depends. Old school Alexander O'Neal. And so I asked myself, okay, what are some patterns that I might need to change? And so for those individuals who paid attention last week or the week before, I talked about how I've been working on getting in better shape. And so what does that look like? Well, I've been going for walks, trying to change that pattern. And that's made a big difference. I've like down 20 pounds working on different patterns. And so think about what are some patterns that you can create to change your life, right? If you're noticing that every single time you have a conversation with somebody that you are avoiding that individual or getting upset or showing passive aggressive tendencies, that is a pattern that needs to change. Or if you notice that you're hostile towards individuals, that's a pattern that needs to change. Or this is one a lot of people, I mean, we don't even think about this one, but codependency, that's a big one. Especially if you're in a relationship, we have societal expectations as far as what the man should do, what the woman should do. And sometimes in those relationships, we don't really establish boundaries. And so what ends up happening is we kind of give our power away and we kind of feel slighted. So, and then we might end up having what we have is called a quick temper, right? We may shout out at somebody, we may snap at somebody, or another behavior pattern is acting on impulse. So you may basically go out, have a plan, and all of a sudden change it. Now, here's the thing. I think it's important to live life, like I would say, a little bit of spontaneity. But if that's a continual pattern and you're not getting a lot of things done, then that might be something that you need to address. And then the last one I want to talk about, which is a big one that a lot of individuals struggle with, and that is self-sabotage, right? And you might say, what do you mean by that? Well, sometimes people, they get caught up with cognitive distortions or thoughts so much to the point where they destroy relationships subconsciously, or they're so fearful that the actions they take aren't coming from the heart. They're not creating a relationship or a building type scenario. If you're coming from fear, then you're not going to build anything. You're going to be afraid of what you're creating. But if you're coming from love, or you're coming from a place of joy or peace, then you will make moves and steps that give you that particular vibration. And the self-sabotage is huge because you may end up being with somebody that you know is not the right person for you. And then, unfortunately, if you continue down that path, what ends up happening? Well, the dreams and the goals that you really wanted to accomplish, unfortunately, they don't happen, right? And then who can you blame? Who can you blame? Well, you blame that person. But at the end of the day, you're ultimately responsible for you. You chose to engage in that individual. And so, what are you doing to help your patterns? So, the first thing I would suggest is once you realize, right, because that right there could be an issue. For me personally, because I've had people say, well, Larry, how do you know this? Like, how can you change this pattern? And so I want to talk a little bit about my story. So for me, I was involved in a relationship many years ago. I think I talked about this before. And the individual that I was involved with was a narcissist. And so I'm an empath. And for those individuals that know, empaths are very intuitive. So we can kind of feel into things. And what the narcissist was doing was manipulating those emotions, because from her perspective, she wanted to get some validation based on that emotion. And because a lot of men, we come from our mothers, unfortunately, we need to really work on that. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But unfortunately, because of our mothers, and we want to please our mothers, we want to make sure that things are happy with our mothers. Unfortunately, we become, I would say, we become victims in this situation, right? In this emotional game, until we learn how to balance and control our emotions and make sure that we honor our emotions. And so, long story short, that relationship taught me a lot of things in terms of intuitive type of communication with myself, with source, um, and also having more confidence within myself. But speaking of patterns, the pattern that I realized through that relationship was people pleasing. So for those individuals who have a mother like myself, love my mom, but growing up very controlling, I wanted to please, right? And we do that to make sure that we don't get lashes on the head, we don't get the verbal breakdown, the emotional turmoil, or mom taking away something from us that we really want. And so, unfortunately, when I was younger, I picked up these patterns. But that relationship was a catalyst because it put me so much on I would say emotional roller coaster, to the point where I had to step back and say, wait a minute, what's up? And during that time, I ended up moving back and staying with my mother. And what's really interesting about your mom is she has unconditional love for you, right? Unfortunately, when you're in a relationship with a young lady, um, they say it's unconditional, but it's really all about what you can give or produce for them, right? But your mom, she's not getting anything from you, right? She produced you, and so whatever types of things she's saying with you is straight up real, neutral, no chaser. And so I remember having a conversation with my mom, and she looked at me in my eye and she says, "I didn't raise you this way. Like, what's up? Like, what's going on?" And in that time, energetically, I was weak because I had given my power away. And so as I kicked her, um, oh, cool. Looks like somebody hit us up on Facebook. I wasn't trying to look up. Okay. Okay. Um, so anyway, when I was in that situation, it taught me that, and kicking it with my mom a little bit. She was like, look, man, all I did was give you love and give you support. And in that relationship, I realized that that individual just wanted to get something from me. Okay, look like somebody just replied. I'm trying to read what this says here. I don't know if you can see it here. It looks like it says, I'm feeding people, or maybe I just missed it. Okay, I digress. Anyway, feel free, if you guys want to reach out to us on Facebook, Instagram, send a shout out, say hello. But anyway, I realized, that I needed to take control of my power emotionally, and otherwise people can manipulate and use it. And you may say, really, Larry, how's that? Well, think about commercials. We may watch a commercial, and they sell us this big car or big truck or some sort of widget that we like. Well, what do you think their goal is? Their goal is to try to get us to have an emotional response, so that we think to ourselves, you know what, I need to go buy that because that's going to make me stronger, it's going to make me faster. That's what they do with name brand types of things. And unfortunately, it's old school pimping. So but I realize that. And so the question is, you have to have control of your mind. You have to have control of your mind. And unfortunately, because we grew up in this world where we're inundated with technology, we're inundated with so many things around us, we have to practice this daily. And while I was staying with my parents, I had to have a real conversation with my mom. And then I started putting a lot of energy into myself, right? And it was a challenge at first because I had to build up my confidence. But I'm putting this out here because I realized that the people pleasing pattern that I had was destructive to me. It was basically put me in a situation where, because my people pleasing nature was was with somebody who didn't really care about me, it was about me pleasing them, then basically I was their puppet. And so once I realized this, I had to it was I would say a death of an ego because I had to swallow my pride and say, man, I can't really blame her. I have to really take some accountability for myself and I have to change this pattern. And so for me, what I ended up doing was I separated myself from folk for a little bit. You know, I had to do some internal healing. I surrounded myself with those individuals that were giving deposits to me. And you may ask, what are deposits? These are people who just straight up got love for you, right? They're not judging you. They just have your back. And I forgot to mention, my mom, she's grown too, but at that time, she had a lot of questions. And I remember I had to kind of cut her off, like, look, I know this isn't kind of what you did as far as raising me. I'm in this situation right now. And I looked her in her eyes and said, Mom, you know what? I just need a mom right now. And she stopped in her tracks and she was like, you know what? Okay, I got you. And we kind of had our relationship. And so that was basically me lobbying for myself, right? Advocating for myself. And it's important for you to do this. And so once I did that, I started walking. I started asking myself, okay, why was I doing stuff like this, right? And then I realized there's some things I was doing in the house, people pleasing, right? And then I just certain things I just took care of because I just felt like that was my duty because my parents were allowing me to kind of kick it there. But then, certain things I had to kind of change and say, you know what, do I want to do this or am I doing this because this is a certain expectation? And so I had to deconstruct the pattern and change it. And this is important because once I changed it, then my life changed. I'm going to say it again. Once I changed it, then my life changed. And so what ended up happening was I ended up eventually moving to another place, getting a different position. Felt a little bit different way about myself. And because of that experience, I made sure I always took care of me first. And some people will say, well, Larry, man, that's selfish. Actually, ironically, what I've learned is if you take care of yourself at least an hour a day, that's not selfish. That's actually selfless. Let me qualify this. When you give to yourself and you nurture yourself and you heal those aspects of yourself, what's going to happen is you're going to communicate and attract those individuals who will support you at that level. Because once you heal yourself, what happens is you're no longer attracted to those individuals who you had the trauma bond with. So you'll notice that some people will leave your life because you decided to have a different pattern. And at first, I was like, okay, there's a fear sometimes that you have that you'll leave your unknown, or excuse me, you'll leave people you know, right? And then you're going into the unknown, which is very scary, very scary. But here's the thing I realized. In that situation, I would so much rather go into something I didn't know rather than be emotionally manipulated. And if you've ever experienced that, you'll probably be at that place too. But here's the benefit to this though. Because you're communicating to the universe through your actions and you're taking care of yourself, then what's going to happen is the universe is going to send you situations and people to match that vibration. So the universe sent me here to Washington. Now, this is the part that's really interesting. At some point, I always wanted to come on the radio and communicate my truth. But I was trying to get some things popping. And, like I said, I came during COVID. And ironically, one of my clients basically said, hey, man, you should do it. And that kind of was a springboard to kind of get me into the situation. But I'm sharing this with you because I had to change some patterns. And so when I coach a lot of my individuals or students or couples, it's something that I've actually experienced and I'm doing constantly. And so when they share with me, well, how do you know this? I'm like, because I'm living this. And they're like, oh, you the truth. I'm like, yeah. So if you're interested in really finding out this journey and changing those patterns, you'll notice what happens in your life is you will have more of a fulfilled life. Now, unfortunately, some people will leave you. However, those individuals leaving you weren't really helping you anyway, right? They were individuals that you and that individual had a trauma bond with. And once you heal that trauma, then all of a sudden you don't really need them anymore and they'll just kind of fall off. Or you just won't really have an interest, or the phone won't work, or you'll get a different number. The universe has a very weird way of kind of how it presents itself. But I'm sharing that because as you change the patterns, then you create better patterns or healthier patterns, and then you notice your life is more fulfilled. And so now, and I like to keep it 100. At that time, I noticed that there were certain people that I would spend time with because I wanted attention. But when I stopped giving those individuals attention, again, changing that pattern, and started giving myself attention, right? Then all of a sudden I noticed that attention was given to me in a different way, or I had a desire for that validation, right? And I'm sharing this because we are what we focus on. And I'll say it again. We are what we focus on. If we're focusing on trauma, if we're focusing on people pissing us off, being upset, dealing with, just being out here in these streets, again, I'm not judging it. However, unfortunately, what we do is we recreate it, right? And in order for us to stop recreating that, then we had to change the pattern. We had to change the pattern. And so I noticed for me, as I started to change the pattern, then I realized that I needed to change, well, the universe actually changed the people, because the individuals here in Seattle are a lot different than individuals in Detroit. And so I ended up meeting some really, really cool people, right? But it's because I became a better, cooler person within myself. And so I'm sharing this with you because I wish, when I was younger, that somebody could like peep game with me when I was younger. And so those individuals who I've had as clients, or those individuals who I've worked with, they've used a lot of these strategies and their life has like changed completely. And so I implore you to reach out to me and let's connect and have a session, or just rap and try a few things and see what happens. You'll notice, you'll be like, wow, this brother, I don't know, how does he know this? And I'm saying, because I live it. I live it. When you're looking at a mirror, right? And you're looking at your reflection, who changes the reflection, right? If you imagine that you're standing there, you're looking in a mirror, who is changing the reflection? You are. The reflection doesn't change. It only changes when you, the main person looking in the mirror, changes. And so when I understood this concept, and the mirror reflection represents what's going on in society, right? And if we're looking at society and we're not looking within ourselves, by that I mean the person that's standing in front of the mirror, then we get it messed up. We get it twisted. We start looking outside of ourselves, or in other words, being the mirror image, and then we think that that's ruling us. But actually, we have to stop and say, whoa, let's take some internal stock. Let's fine tune. Let's do an internal shower. Let's clean up a couple things, and let's see what happens. Now, I'm gonna share this with you. It's scary. It's very scary, because you have to kind of get your mind strong enough to practice focusing on the inside out. And you might say, inside out, what is he talking about? Well, I'm talking about those patterns. These are things that we learn from our ancestors, some things we may learn from our family members. And so when I went back, I noticed these patterns, and I realized I was grateful because some of these patterns I no longer have. I remember kind of going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I just did it because I just thought that that's what I do. But as I realized I was doing that, I said, whoa, let me stop this. And I noticed I started just going back, but not forth. Right. And then all of a sudden I wasn't going back or forth. And all of a sudden I start to observe and do something neutral to understand the moment, honor the moment, but not get attached to it. And I'm sharing this with you because as you practice these skills, you'll be able to kind of commandeer your life and have more control of your life instead of feeling like your life is controlling you. But it takes some effort. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen a little bit at a time as long as you put in that consistent effort. Okay. So anyway, I wanted to share that. One other pattern too that I would like for us to kind of work on too is positive self-talk. A lot of times, we may hear people say negative things in music, or maybe our parent or spouse or loved one. And unfortunately, if we hear a lot of things, our subconscious starts to believe that, right? Or we look at a lot of these commercials. If you're watching a lot of technology or watching a lot of TV, our brain is constantly sifting through that. And unfortunately, if we hear it over and over and over and over again, then we believe that's true. And so I would implore you to challenge some of your belief systems, right? And you may say, well, Larry, why do we have to challenge that? And the reason why that's important is because your belief systems are the main foundation that allows you to create your reality. But unfortunately, some of our belief systems are a little skewed. So I would implore you guys to really work on practicing some of those things, challenging some of those belief systems. And as you challenge them and you heal through them, then you'll notice that you'll become successful. Okay. So real quick, we're kind of getting close to our time. So I want to remind you guys, Thursday and Friday, live shows will be canceled this week. And then next Monday, all the shows will be canceled. So keep that in mind. I'll be back the following week, which will be the 16th. So make sure you guys tune into that. Also, make sure you guys shout out to my guests. They'll be coming in, well, not my guests, but Better Together, Living Powerfully should be coming on here shortly from 6 to 7. So make sure you guys show her some love. And without further ado, guys, I'll see you guys the following week or the week after. Have a good time. Deuces.